This is the Improve and Have Fun podcast. My name is Paul Perez, and on this podcast, I'm working on improving myself while having fun along the way. And in this episode, I wanted to talk about escort services and selling your stuff. These are things that I'm going through right now. This is almost like an audio blog that I have going in terms of this podcast and just things that are going on in my life, the self-development stuff that I listen to and trying to apply into my own life. But before we get into the meat and potatoes of this episode, I wanted to do a little bit of housekeeping. And it's going back on some of the things that I said I was going to do in previous episodes that I'm no longer going to be following through with. In the last episode, or the recent episode, I did the reviews for The Flash, the first episode of the new season, and the same for Legends of Tomorrow, and saying that I was going to go ahead and review the whole season for these particular shows, but I decided not to. I was really thinking about it, and by this point, I've already watched the next two episodes 2 and 3 of the new seasons of both of these shows, and nothing just stands out for me. They are an enjoyable watch, 100%, but if the show was to go off the air or be canceled, I wouldn't miss it. I really wouldn't. And like I said, it's fun to watch. I would probably still watch these seasons, but I may check out halfway or maybe just not see it and see it down the road sometime. It's not like must-watch TV for me, so I'm not going to be doing that. And the other thing I talked about was not numbering the episodes after 100. I'm now back and forth on it, whether I will or I won't. So I just wanted to go ahead and maybe redact or renege those things that I said I was going to do. But let's go ahead and get into the episode. This first part is regarding selling your stuff. This was inspired by a recent episode of the Scavenger Life podcast. It's a podcast I've talked about before on this podcast by two people, Jay and Ryan, who make their living by selling items on eBay. They've grown from that, where they have an Airbnb business, and I think they're do some kind of video work as well on the side. But the main income is eBay, basically. And they were talking about traveling and talking about that when they travel, they are trying to go with less items. And they've downsized in terms of the items that they travel with. They've gone from going to Europe with, from the US with big old bags to getting it down to a backpack. And this just reactivated this interest that I have in minimalism. I have a book that I've gone ahead and done the biggest takeaways for on this podcast. I'll link to that. And also, I love the Minimalist podcast. I listen to that often. But once again, this Scavenger Life episode reactivated this interest. And then I went down this rabbit hole of TED Talks where they talked about living happier by owning less, in the sense of less items, the less attention and time that you have to devote to these items, giving you free time to do whatever it is that you want to do, which I think is really fascinating. It's almost like our possessions keep us trapped, which I thought that, like I said, that's very, very interesting to me. But that inspired this article that I wrote, and I want to read that to you now. Bicycling for me is a quick way to get from point A to point B, run errands, and another form of exercise. I ride my bicycle to go food shopping, ride to my nearest Target or Home Depot when needed. I would take really long trips from Jersey to NYC, Yonkers, Washington Heights, the South Bronx, mostly visiting family. In 2017, I found myself using my bicycle a lot less. Why? Walking and listening to podcasts has taken over. Podcasts provide me with education, entertainment, material for content of my own. The process of being in motion while listening helps me grasp what I'm hearing through the headphones. Walking and listening are ideal during great weather days, but I found myself doing the same during the winter months. And I also wanted to add is not just podcasts. I also have a YouTube Red membership where it allows you to listen to YouTube without having to kind of keep your phone on. you can basically put it on the lock screen and have it fade out, and the audio will continue to go. And I found that to be tremendous and absolutely worth having the YouTube Red subscription. I use it mostly for dancehall reggae mixtapes, but like I said, if there's a good TED Talk that I found on YouTube that I want to listen to, that I don't have to, that I can like leave the house and walk around and listen to it without saving up or like using my bandwidth on my phone, I can do that because the YouTube Red subscription does that. So it's worth its weight in gold. It really is. But now continuing with the article. One might ask, can't you listen to podcasts while bicycling? Over the years, I've been hit by cars while riding. I wasn't following common sense rules of the road, and riding distracted is dangerous. And it really grinds my gears, or just makes me question when I see people riding bicycle with headphones, and I'm like, dude, you are looking to get into an accident. Continuing, lately I've been paying attention to my patterns, my daily behaviors. What things do I regularly use? If I don't use that thing, I'd sell it on eBay and make some extra cash. My eBay store is paulsellsthings.com. I wasn't using my bike, so I put it up for sale. Much more space became available in my tiny studio apartment, and I was the happier for it. However, nostalgia for times past makes me want to do otherwise. I recently was motivated to look back at some of my earlier vlogs from last year. I'll leave a link in the show notes so that you can check out what I'm talking about. I felt they often had great messages, but were poorly put together. I sold a lot of the vlogging equipment in between that time. It was seldom used. Looking back at those old vlogs taught me many lessons and made me think how I would do things differently if I were to take up video blogging again. Also, what cameras, devices I would need to do so effectively. I also did lots of bicycling in the videos, which made me miss my bicycle. And the lessons learned here? Lesson number 1, pay attention to your patterns and what you regularly use. And that could be anything. Clothing, utensils, shoes are examples that bubble up to my mind. Sell or get rid of the rest of your stuff you don't use. You won't take any of that stuff with you when you pass on. Why put the burden of getting rid of your stuff on someone else? If you don't want to deal with it, why do you think someone else will? Things that I've kept that I almost never use are a fire extinguisher, a flashlight, and a hammer, just to give a few examples. I've kept these in case of emergencies or if something needs fixing in the apartment. Now, this was inspired by a couple of situations. I heard on the James Altucher show in passing where he famously got rid of all his stuff and lives out of a bag and has been living in Airbnbs, but recently he ended up getting an apartment, but he still doesn't own much. He was having an interview with someone, and they said in the conversation, if you pass or if you die and you leave your stuff to your kids are most likely going to end up selling it or getting rid of it, because if you didn't want to deal with it, then why do you think somebody else is going to want to deal with it? There's this local pool that I go to in my town where I live, and the supervisor who's in charge of the whole thing, her mother recently passed this year, and she's had to make trips back and forth to Florida where her mother was to do something with the house and to get rid of all her stuff. So that's another reason to go ahead and get rid of your stuff. Personally, I've even gotten rid of my photo albums. I don't think that my photo albums, I don't have any kids. I have nieces and nephews, but honestly, that just was sitting there, and they had pictures from when I was a kid and things like that, but I put that up for sale on eBay. I'm not going to take that with me when I pass on. And another plus of getting rid of more and more stuff is I've moved a lot in the last few years, and I'm going to eventually move from this apartment. If I can have less stuff to move with, that'll make my move a lot less painful for sure. But let's go ahead and continue with the lessons here. Lesson number 2, make mistakes, experiment, fail, and experience. Those early vlogs taught me how to put together a more cohesive video. I was inspired and made a new vlog recently. I felt it came out great compared to my old stuff. I'm going to leave a link so that you can see that video as well. And Just another piggyback thing that I heard in this rabbit hole when I was doing all this research. I heard this in a TED talk where, we often are working so hard to get this thing, to buy this thing, but the happiness with the thing fades. An experience stays with you forever. An experience, especially when you have that experience with someone else, you share that experience, that bond together. So go for more experiences and buy less things, whether it be a new iPhone, a new car. The happiness for that only lasts for so long, but an experience, the memories will be with you forever. And the third and final lesson, if you sell a thing you used to own, you can most likely get it back, especially with eBay. Was there an old action figure from your childhood that you loved? You can find it on eBay. A specific bicycle model you loved? Find it on eBay. I'm not saying you will find the exact thing all the time, but a copy or similar item might do the trick. I took my bicycle off sale, greased, oiled it, rode it around the neighborhood. It was great, and I missed it. Other things that I believe that can be a really big waste of money or putting yourself into undue stress, other things that require purchasing or a big amount of money or a big money commitment would be two things, and that's going to college and buying a house. Many would say they're buying a house as an investment and you could fix it up and you can sell it. Even Grant Cardone, who is a real big real estate mogul, I would say, he advises against buying a house. James Altucher often has talked about not going to college and not buying a house because those are places where you're just going to be losing money, basically. And Grant Cardone is big on buying apartment buildings so that you can rent the apartments out to folks. And that comes with its own headaches and issues. I am in a firm agreement with both of these situations. I went to a trade school to basically learn how to become a secretary, and the money that had to be paid back for that, thankfully, wasn't a lot. I ended up buying a house with my mom, and because of buying the house and refinancing it and fixing it up, that money was able to help me pay off my school debt, which wasn't a lot. It really wasn't. The stress and the living paycheck to paycheck to an extreme sense, especially what I've seen my mom pass through, where she would get paid and not even have money to do anything else. So it was like, if we weren't all together in this house situation, like we would just not eat, because she would just pour all her money into this house. Whatever money she had, it would go into this house. And to live like that and to have this debt of this house on top of your head, the undue stress that comes with that, I would rather avoid and never step into that again. So I too, I can speak from experience when it comes to buying a house. That was a headache that I would never entertain again. And going to college, I never have been to college, but I've been to a trade school. But I will tell you that the main thing that I learned in that secretary school is basically how to type and how to use a computer to some extent. It's been more of my years of using a computer on my own that I've actually learned more. If I knew everything that I knew now, and I just came out of high school, what I would have done, just thinking back, I would have started my eBay store. The logistics of moving merchandise to a storage unit, from a storage unit to a storage unit, that might be a pain in the butt, but all the money that was spent probably going to college, I would have used that money to build up my eBay store. Thing number one, that's what I would have done. While working odd jobs here and there, but definitely slowly growing the eBay store and taking my time to grow it during my 20s. Just be consistent with that. I would have just built that up. I think that would have been really, really cool. Another thing I would have done, and this is all while working as well. The other thing I would have done is I would have started journaling and been consistent with that. No, I'm sorry. I would have started blogging. And I actually started blogging a while ago. My very first girlfriend, she had this thing called LiveJournal, and it intrigued me. And I started a LiveJournal. I just wasn't very consistent with it. But I thought it was really cool. And I had a LiveJournal for a little bit, but I just kind of let it go and just didn't pay it any mind. Looking back, I wish I would have continued with the LiveJournal, because that online blogging, that online content, whether it be good or bad, could have been turned into YouTube videos when YouTube started becoming popular. It could have been turned into audio content when podcasts started up. So I would have had like all these years. I would have had 2 decades of content. That would have been just crazy. And the money that could have come from that, or the experiences of the people that I could have met. So I would have started blogging. I would have started doing eBay while working odd jobs. To this day, I work in a hotel at a front desk position in a union town, which is New York City. And I'm paid for what I think. I'm paid pretty good. Okay? With that said, I didn't get that job because I went to secretary school. I got that job because my dad worked in a hotel, and he always was telling me he was going to get me a job, and he got me the job in the hotel, and I've been doing that ever since. But what I'm trying to say is this: if you forgo going to college, and if there's something that interests you, or even if it doesn't interest you, just something that you think that you can do, you can take an apprenticeship with someone that does it, work for free for a period of time if need be, live at home. And I'm talking about fresh out of high school, until you kind of get acclimated with that industry, or the person who takes you under their wing introduces you to people and then starts giving you jobs from there. You could have avoided this whole trap of debt that comes with college or anything like that. But going back, those are the things that I would have done if I knew everything that I know now, and I could time travel back and talk to myself at the age of 17, graduating from high school. I would have said start a blog, and I would have said start an eBay store and stay consistent with those things. The things that I have stayed consistent with over the years that I'm happy that I did is I've social dancing. I've stayed consistent with that, and I've met a lot of people, and I've even had a little bit of a tribe in that space. Another thing has been drawing. I love comic books when I was a kid. My brother used to draw. I wanted to draw. I started to draw for a little bit. My drawing, there were years that I didn't draw, but I've always been kind of on and off with the drawing. But now, during the last few years, I've been rediscovering that and drawing with these new tools and the iPad, and it's super cool. The drawing has been inconsistent, but it's been there since I was a kid. And the other thing that's been there inconsistently since my early 20s has been the DJing. That's another thing my older brother did that I kind of have stayed with, and you hear it on this podcast. So all of those things that I like to do, they're all involved in this podcast, in this blog, or like if you see my YouTube stuff, there's dancing stuff, there's art stuff, there's in this podcast, there's DJ stuff. So all the interests that I had when I was a kid are still here. So what I'm trying to say is I didn't have to go to college. I didn't have to go buy a house. If I had the opportunity to use all that money, it would have been to stay in the space that I am now. It took me 20 years from when I was, it took to my 40s. That's what I'm trying to say. It took to my 40s to realize this is where I exist. This is where I love to stay. This is where I love to be. Let me plant my roots here finally and stop trying to do the new thing or stop trying to do the cool thing and just plant my roots here. On the flip side, I can say that throughout that time, making mistakes, having experiences, and having failures, it's brought me to this space. So that is the one thing that I can say. I just wish that, of course, we all do that. We all know what we want to know earlier so that we can just spend all the time doing that. I'm thankful for the experiences. I'm thankful for the girlfriends, for the issues and the highs and the lows, because it would not have made me the person who I am today, who I love and who I'm not perfect. I have my issues, but I'm a lot more confident in myself than I was back then. And I think that if you're trying to be cool, that's where being cool comes in, is just rolling with the punches, going ahead, and still pushing forward and accepting yourself with your freak flag flying high. This next part is about escort services, and that being born from my issues of porn and masturbation. Let's get into this article that I wrote regarding the situation. Most nights right before getting to bed, I get the urge to watch porn, to masturbate and watch porn. In reading Way of the Superior Man by David Dieta, porn and masturbation lower my power as a man, and I will link to my book takeaways for this particular book. The book indirectly says it lowers my confidence. Rubbing furiously down there desensitizes the sensation of being inside a woman. In the past, when I was with a partner, there were occasions where I had trouble becoming erect. I blame it on the years of porn and masturbation. Porn changes my mental connections from what is naturally, pleasurably sexy versus a video of people performing sex. Real sex is not edited or 3 go-to positions. I feel it's awkward, vulnerable, fun, exciting, sexier, and much more intense in person. The thing is, when it comes to porn, I've been watching it for so long, and that's 20 plus years, and I like it. The variety is the best. However, I know it's not good for me. This is where the struggle comes in. Identifying the time when the porn watching and masturbation happen, like I mentioned before, it happens right after dinner but right before going to bed. I'm hoping that by openly talking about it, it will help me in this battle to ultimately stop. When I've been in relationships, I wouldn't entertain porn as much. I'm currently working on meeting someone new. I'm using dating websites such as OkCupid and Coffee Meets Bagel. I don't consider myself shy, but I have trouble talking to women that I find attractive. I just finished saying that I've definitely grown more confident throughout the years, and I'm so grateful for life and experience for bringing that to me. But still, when it comes to attractive women, I feel uncomfortable. I feel that my confidence is not at its full power. Like I just have to kind of ease and be into myself. I just fumble my words and things. So I think it's kind of cute, but it's also doesn't feel good. You know what I'm saying? If I was to see somebody going through this, I would have an affection for them because I've been through that. But kind of when you're going through it, it doesn't feel so great. In the meantime, I've begun entertaining escort services, i.e. paying ladies of the night found on Backpage.com, with the hopes of holding me over sex-wise. I see using escort services as a form of self-care, similar to getting a massage or using a sensory deprivation tank, going to the gym, or taking a yoga class. It's more expensive than each of those activities. I couldn't afford to do it every week. A hidden fear of mine is acquiring another STD. Having to explain genital herpes is bad enough. This is my latest experiment. Let's see how this goes long term. Are you trying to quit porn? Let go of masturbation? Share your story in the comments below. I'm sure it will help somebody else. If you're listening to this in the audio form, then you can do so. You can comment on the blog. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you can comment below. Now, that's the end of the article there. Paying for prostitutes isn't the best way to go about things. I'm sure that has its issues in its own. I am actively trying to meet someone. I am actively paying prostitutes to have sex with them. The good thing that's come of this, I haven't actually watched porn or masturbated in over a week, which is pretty good for me, believe it or not. That's actually pretty good. Like I'm almost like holding it in until I can pay for the next prostitute. Or if I meet someone, that's the best case scenario. If I meet someone and we're hitting it off and that's cool, then I don't have to go about, no more on the Backpage.com. I've met someone. We'll see how this goes. Like I said, not the best solution, but on the flip side, it is helping me. So as always, if there's anything that I've mentioned here that you wanted to go ahead and talk to me about, or you wanted to discuss, like I said, please comment and I will definitely get back to you. And there's also a great YouTube video that I've seen and listened to a couple of times regarding porn, how you're watching it over a period of time messes with your connections in terms of what's pleasurable in real life. And that's what I was talking about in the article. This one YouTube video, it's an interview of Gary Wilson by Stefan Molyneux. I'll link to it. And they really go into detail in terms of how watching porn can cause erectile dysfunction. And I find it really fascinating. But that's going to be the end of the podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. And I'll catch you on the next one, which will be episode 100, 100 episodes. And I'm still finding my feet with this podcasting thing. But if you listen to me for some time, I'm so grateful, as always. Thank you.